I was told to delay the woo so you can actually hear the music. Hey, welcome to Veterans Day. Hope everybody's doing great. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the GovCast. Hope you got through the election. Everybody's alive and well.
Woo!
Yes.
A lot has been happening. Wow, yeah, this world, a lot has happened.
What happened? Things happened this week? What happened?
I think they're still counting. I don't know.
Actually, they are still counting. That's what's crazy. They actually are still counting. I think there's, 3 states still counting, I think,
1,
right?
2, 3. It's a long process.
So crazy. I think there's actually still 3 states, but North Carolina, Georgia, and Alaska still counting votes. I know all you people on the left are like, it's already done. I get it. I hear it. I'm not trying to reset the election, but fun week since last time we were all together. Crazy, the election, and today's Veterans Day. So obviously want to wish everyone that has served the military, or if your family has members that have served the military, if you've been back home, just can't thank you all enough. The sacrifice that you make so that we can have the election, debate the election, and all the things that we take for granted in this amazing country really come from folks that are willing to volunteer and serve and protect us, and all the stuff that happens behind the scenes that we take for granted. It reminds me of what's the movie when he's like, what's the Jack Nicholson, and then Tom Cruise is asking him, he's like, all the things that are happening on the wall, we are on the wall. What's the name of the movie? You know what I mean? He's like,
where were they at the memorial with the name plaques on it?
Oh, when he says you can't handle the truth. You know what I mean? He's Top Gun. No, it's not Top Gun. When he says you can't handle the truth.
You can't handle the truth. Time to Kill?
Oh, I'm
the worst when it comes to movies. Sorry. Trey, where are you? We need you right now.
Somebody, that brings great. If you have comments or questions, put them in below. If you can help us with the name of the movie. When Tom Cruise is like, you can't handle the truth. I forget which movie.
I got this thing called Google. I could do that for you.
Google it while it's in. So today, Andrea is not with us. She's on the IR. She sustained an eye industry. We're not sure how. I think she hurt herself.
A few good men. Jeff threw it in there.
There it is. A few good men. Yes. So it's so true, though. We all sleep and walk and enjoy and shop and work under the safety that our military provides, and I think we take that for granted all too many times. So God bless. Again, happy Veterans Day to everyone that is serving and has served our military. Amazing. And as I was saying, Andrea's out. She is injured, not being in the military. She injured herself, so she hurt her eye. She's at the eye doctor. We shall be back next week. And Stevie B's here, though.
Hey, everybody. Stephen Bryan, the Dean of GovSales University.
Dean of what? What are you the Dean of? What is it?
GovSales University.
Oh, God. What's that?
Everybody knows what GovSales University is. It's the platform to help you learn how to sell to the government.
Whoa. There you go.
Come on. We got a big following here, Jack. This is a crazy, top million in total LinkedIn.
Top million shows in LinkedIn Live. So we're in the top million shows in LinkedIn Live, making our way up.
That's it. We're climbing the ladder there. But really appreciate what you're saying about the veteran. That's why I'm wearing my American flag T-shirt.
See, you got stuff there. I got my red, white, and blue beads on.
Totally.
Got my Navy, my camouflage, rolling strong today.
Yeah, it's great. My next door neighbor, he served in the Marines. Today we're gonna cook him and his girlfriend dinner. We're gonna just do some grilling out there, burgers, sausage, hot dogs, and said, "Don't worry about dinner. We got you covered." Thank you for your services.
Nice. That is super nice. I think yesterday the Marines celebrated their anniversary birthday, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it was their birthday, and then happens to be Veterans Day normally falls on a Monday, but this year it's on a Wednesday.
Everything in 2020 is off.
So. It's all off. Yeah, pleasure to be here, Jack.
Yes. We have a great guest today. It's perfect. Sometimes the stars all align, and we have Jeff DeGarmo here. Jeff DeGarmo here, who's actually a veteran. He's an entrepreneur. He's sold to the government. He's helping people create their own businesses. So amazing. Sometimes it all comes together. You're like, oh,
he's ran triathlons.
Right. He's like endurance coach, life coach. So amazing. He's going to touch a lot of spots today. So today it's all aligned. We're like, oh yeah, we have a veteran on Veterans Day. I wish we were that planned, but it all worked out well. So thank goodness. So before we get to that, we've had a string of, we've been going through the kind of the 10 myths. And we're interrupted by a couple of webinars that we've had, which has been great, promoting GSU and helping folks sell to the government. And then in the midst of that, as we've had the GovCast, and we've moved now to Wednesdays at noon, we've been doing the 10 myths of selling to the government. So I think we're actually up to number 9. So we're almost on the list. So Steve, number 9 is?
Myth number 9. The process to sell to various government agencies is basically the same. And that is false. That is false. I wish it was. I think it'd make everybody's life a lot easier if every agency across the nation said, this is the form you fill out. This is what you do. But that is not the truth. So we are here to debunk that myth today. I will say, though, that working with federal agencies, it's pretty much the same process for the different agencies. But when it comes down to state and local, it varies, right? One city could be right next to another city and have 2 completely different processes. And that's one thing that you have to understand. And that's why we have GovSales University, because there is an underlying tone that I would say, 80, 85% are the same process, but then it comes down to their unique ways. Like, what's your discretionary spend limit, right? One agency will say $2,500. The city next door, they'll say ours is $10,000 or $50,000. So it really depends on how they set up those parameters. Yeah. And it's just one of those things. But that's the way the government works. You think at the state agency, it would all have a trickle down effect with the local government agencies, with the schools, as well as the cities and counties. But it really depends on that agency itself. So one thing we teach is what questions to ask when you are in conversations with a government agency, because knowing what to ask is a lot better than knowing what to say.
Yeah, amen.
Let that sink in there.
I think it's really frustrating when folks, one of the reasons that makes the top 10 myths is folks have to see that it'll feel very much like private industry. You'll go, you'll talk to them, they'll buy something the next day. You'll be like, what the heck is that? You know what I mean? And some of it can be a lot of red tape. And as Stephen mentioned, those agencies might be right next to each other. We've had times when the agency literally they butt up against each other. One has a ton of regulations, a ton of process, and does everything in a very administratively burdensome way. And the other one's freestyling, right? They're like, oh, we're just going to buy things. We'll figure it out. It really depends on who's leading the procurement department, because they'll all, just like your taxes, they'll all interpret the laws and how things are supposed to be bought and what the parameters are. They're all interpreted a little differently. And so no chance. If you've done 10, does not mean that's how they all do it, right? They're all different. And folks have this thing, they're like, well, that's how it's done. That's how we win our deals. And we're like, I know, but that doesn't mean that's how everyone does it, right? We confront that all the time, right, Steve? Yeah,
the one great thing, and this came up on a conversation the other day with a student in GSU, was talking about piggyback. They're like, what is piggyback? And I told him, I said, this is a great way. It's basically establishing your own contract. And it works if other agencies follow the same procurement process as that agency that you won your deal with. So just kind of take a step back. You see an RFP or a bid out there. You take your time. You fill in the response with the city of so-and-so. Once you win that deal, you can add language to it that says, hey, other agencies can also utilize this contract. So instead of getting on a state contract, GSA, co-op, you can actually win a bid in RFP and turn that into your own little contract. And any agency that does follow that same process can buy off of that and avoid the bid in RFP, which is ultimately what you're trying to do is, just make sure you can give the agency what they need. They can buy from you and make that process as easy as possible.
So true. Listen, and their interagency co-op agreement, right? You can add that verbiage to your contract. And I've personally had folks in California buy off agency's contract in Miami and vice versa. So there's no
New York and Texas. I had one with there. It was like heavy machinery, like skid steer loaders.
Yeah, I just, for folks that are out there, they when you hear somebody says no and never and not a chance, it's just not true. The government can be super creative, and when you find them the right contractual vehicle, they'll find a way. And we see it firsthand. What we do corporately, we get to see almost every deal that an agency does. And so we're not biased. I'm not recommending one over another. I'm just telling you, because of the nature of what we do with GovSpend, we gather all the purchasing data. So we see all the contracts. We just see all the different ways government buys. It's not like we're not for one or against one, or we're just sharing with you. We see them all. And so when it makes me laugh, people hit me up on social media and be like, what you're saying is not true. I'm like, listen, I'm not guessing. I'm like, I see it.
Here's the data. Here's all the purchases. Look.
We see it every day. We see it live. I'm not like these other people that are telling you what they did 10 years ago, whatever, you know what I mean? We see it every day. We take in literally a couple million purchasers every single week. And so we see what's happening. And so when we share with you something, it's actually live happening. And the last thing I would just add, we don't pull one out of a million. We don't go, hey, well, 4 years ago, one agency bought a little, bought a pen in this weird way, So if it's not prevalent, we don't share it. But like when we see it multiple times, it's like a real thing, right?
Yep.
So true. Great. So that's a real setup. Happy Veterans Day. Myth number 9 dispelled. We'll do Myth 10 next Wednesday. Again, the GovCast has moved to Wednesdays at noon. You guys that are here already know that. And as we bring Jeff on, if you have any comments or questions for him, drop them in below. So I want to bring on Jeff DeGarmo. He lives out in the middle of the country in Oklahoma. Thank you, Jeff, for joining us. And actually was in the Navy. And again, the stars all align. On Veterans Day, we have a former veteran with us. So thank you for your service.
Thank you, Jeff.
Appreciate it
for joining us today. So appreciate it so much. So can you give folks a little bit about your background and what you've done and kind of give them a sense of where you've kind of gone in your career since you started with the Navy?
Yeah. So I was an aerospace engineer in ROTC program at the University of Colorado, and joined the Navy right after a few hours after I graduated from college.
That's awesome.
Got my officer program started, and it's been about 8 years in the Navy. Oddly enough, I spent all of my career after training at Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma. Never spent a day on the boat. Was in a flying career with the nuclear command, control, and communications part of the Navy. During that time, the internet kind of came around, and I've always had an interest in computers and taught myself to develop websites, and decided that I was going to do that after I got out of the Navy. And after a couple of years doing freelance work, I joined with a couple of friends, and we formed an advertising agency. Did that for about 16 years, and we sold that in April of 2019 to a public company. And I stayed on for about the next 9 months, helping with the transition to the new owners, and decided that I was going to go back out on my own. And so since January of 2020, I've been doing some kind of C-level consulting, and primarily I focus on franchise coaching.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think for our audience, Jeff has a wide array of experience, and we're super excited to dive into, again, starting his career in the Navy, being an entrepreneur, and now helping folks plug into the franchise world, which is really an established business practice, kind of being an entrepreneur and plugging into an operating system, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I was talking with somebody yesterday, and I want to make sure I get the verbiage right. It was called Vocational Rehab. So someone that has served was explained to me just how they have, you can go for PTSD if you were in the services. They also have vocational rehab, which empowers people. They actually help fund people that have served to create businesses. And I thought that was great because he was going to buy 2 box trucks to start like a freight, trucking company, and looking to sell to the government. So I know if you could share with our audience, Jeff, like how, you help veterans or people that have served and, getting into the business, maybe veterans selling to the government, or just veterans helping them sell to the private sector.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple of organizations that I work with, and I primarily mentor the transitioning military members and sometimes their spouses that have an interest in going directly into business ownership as opposed to going into just a traditional civilian career. And so I kind of teach them both sides. So I've been fortunate enough that I've started my own business from the ground up and ran it and sold it. And I've also purchased a franchise, ran it and sold it. So I can kind of see the good and bad of both. So I can guide them in that regard. From a franchise system, you're exactly right. What you're getting with that is what you hope you're getting anyway, is a proven model and some systems and some operations and a lot of support from the franchise system. And honestly, from all the other franchisees. I mean, you always have someone that you can call and address problems with. And, you lose a little bit of control, but I think there's a lot of benefits in the franchise system itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had my wife and I have owned 2 retail franchises, so I've been down that road myself. So again, I think there are pros and cons, but great if you love a little organizations but have an entrepreneurial fire. I think it can be great, and so amazing. Can you talk about a little bit about your time, Jeff, in the Navy, and then how you take that, being part of one of the most structured, largest organizations in the world, and coming out and kind of thinking entrepreneurially? Like, how does that transition happen, and kind of what was your mindset, and what does that look like when you kind of make that leap?
Yeah, I mean, I think initially, making the move from the military to kind of starting my own business, it's kind of a completely different world because, in the military, you've got all these ways to do things. You follow this process and you've got someone telling you what to do. And, I think after having done that for 8 years, I was like, I'm going to try it on my own and see what I can do and see what I can build. But then, over time, you come to learn that developing everything on your own and figuring it out on your own is a lot more challenging than maybe piggybacking off someone else's work that has already figured out how to do things a certain way, which I think is why a lot of people kind of like franchise models if they want a proven model that they can work through and not have to do everything themselves.
Yeah. Just going back one last time to your time at the Navy, can you share with our audience maybe some of the resources available to them if folks have served, if they have a background in the military, some of maybe the resources that are out there to help them kind of make their transition to private industry or maybe entrepreneurially make that transition? Any specific resources pop to mind if folks have served in the military?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton out there. Some of the ones that I volunteer with now, Veterati is a very good organization. It's just kind of a one-to-one mentoring with people that are transitioning out of the military.
Spell that again.
Veterati, veterati.com. Another one that I work with is called the Honor Foundation, which is specific to the Special Forces community, which I tend to believe have some of the hardest time making a transition from what they've done in the military to a civilian career. It's been a great organization to work with. Other one like Hiring Heroes USA is a great one. And there's a ton within the military community itself that help that transition. But I think once you kind of step out and can get involved with other veterans and other people supporting veterans in the civilian community, you get just a little bit better guidance in terms of what opportunities are actually out there. No one ever told me that I could go into business for myself when I was leaving the Navy.
Yeah. And for our audience, we'll put those links in the show notes so you don't have to search them down, Veterati and the other resources that Jeff mentioned.
Yeah. So Jeff, I have a question. We kind of like skim the surface. You said, hey, there's pros and cons to building something that's your own and kind of going through the struggle and, getting to the top. You were successful, you started your business and also doing that through the franchise. So could you share with our audience, people that are thinking about starting a business versus, the ones that want to, just buy like a turnkey franchise, like some things that you enjoyed through that process that you gained when you started your own versus, the franchise?
What you gain starting your own is that you basically get to decide how everything's going to work. You get to decide, what services you're going to sell, what you're going to focus on, what directions you want to go, who your clients are going to be. You get to decide how you want to lead, how you want to manage your team, how you want to train them. You just have complete control over everything. And there's benefits to that. And like I said, there's some struggles when, there's a lot of stops and starts and, you got to fail sometimes to learn how to do it the right way. And, the franchise systems are kind of the complete opposite. Hopefully someone's done all that work before you and said, this is how we've seen success. If you follow this model, you have the opportunity, you still have to work hard, but you have the opportunity to have a similar success.
Yeah. Can you talk about, I know, Jeff, I think you've had, if I followed it right, like 4 entrepreneurial companies on your own. Is that right? Including the franchise? Is it 4? Have you had 4 entrepreneurial ventures?
Yeah, just from my freelance. Cubic was my advertising agency. We owned a sports photography franchise. And then I also started a business to own commercial property.
That's amazing. So I think Cubic Creative is the one where you actually also sold to the government, right?
Correct.
So you actually reached out. So can you share with our audience? I mean, I think that's what a lot of folks are like dialed in. They're like, well, hey, what's it look like? How do I start the process? So can you share your experience when you started to sell to the government? I'm sure you could talk the talk because you would work for the Navy. It gives you a lot of, validation. And so can you share what your experience was and kind of who you were selling to and what that was like?
Yeah, I mean, I had 3 other partners in the agency, so convincing them that using a government website to find RFPs for an advertising agency didn't make a lot of sense to them. And to me, it didn't really make a lot of sense, but we kind of established a niche in the last 5 or 6 years of our agency working with local communities that are trying to promote themselves, so destination marketing, place branding, travel and tourism type stuff. And so I went out to the government RFP site to look for local, county, and state organizations that had RFPs that were focused on branding or marketing or some type of campaigns. And we got a lot of great traction. We found a lot of RFPs, and you're exactly right. They were all different. And we can talk about that a little bit. But it was successful for us, and it really gave us a lot more business.
What's amazing, I think one of the things we say, government spends a lot of money, government buys everything, and they always pay. The middle one, I think, is so important. I think if folks hear about a ad agency, right, they would not think, oh, let me go sell to the government. So again, I don't want folks to miss that. Like, not only is there opportunity in everything, whatever you make or sell or out there producing, the government buys it, right? And so it's very interesting. So I'd love to dive into that. Like, what was your experience as you start to look at bids and RFPs and doing advertising, right? I don't think folks naturally think that's a, round peg, round hole for government agencies.
Right.
What did that look like for you? What are some of the things you experienced and maybe some of the differences that you mentioned?
Each one, some of them were very much like pitching any other business. There was a marketing director, and they had the sole say and approval. It was a very simple, 1 or 2 page RFP. We responded, pretty simply, and it was very quick. Others, we had to go through several different stages. We presented to city councils of 40 to 50 people with a lot of citizens in the room, just trying to get approval for our response to the RFP. So the differences are different. I mean, just they're far and wide depending on which community you're working with. And you're right. We worked with a couple of communities in California, and one was super simple, and we just pitched the marketing director, and the other we went through the city council and had to, take the heat of all the comments on all the news articles that were written the day after the city council meeting. So it was eye-opening for sure.
It really is amazing. And what's interesting, I think when folks deal with the private sector, they'll adapt. If some agency, some company tells them to do this or do that, they feel like, oh, that's just part of doing business. And somehow when they start doing business with the government, if the government makes them go through a couple of hoops, they get all freaked out. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm delayed. And I think what you just said is true. I've also experienced that. Sometimes an agency will issue us a PO and we're all good. And I've been the same thing. Come to the city council meeting, go meet the mayor. We got to run this all the way up the chain. You're like, oh my goodness, I'm going to go meet the mayor. You know what I mean? Or the city, you're like come to the council meeting. You're like, oh geez. So it's just part of the sales process, and just thinking about it in the same vein will be so helpful as folks take on the government business. And again, I think as we go into 2021, going to be so critical for so many folks because the government, again, buys everything and they're always going to pay. And so as you think about your 2021 plan, just be, ready to adapt to the scenarios, whatever folks need, right? Any specific learnings that you saw work for you really well? I know it was a little while ago, but like things that worked really well in some of the government maybe, and things you saw that you really struggled with. Any advice if you're talking to somebody who had their own ad agency or just starting the government process? Anything really stick with you? You're like, well, this was really good. This was really bad. Yeah,
I will tell you that especially some of the ones that have a little bit harder process, they're very specific in what the response needs to look like. I mean, some of them to the point of, it's got to be 5 3-ring binders with all these sections labeled this way in this order. And for an advertising agency, that was not the way we respond. I mean, we would put together a nice, beautiful book with, great language and pictures and respond with something that showed our creativity. And so having to kind of step back and really follow a very specific process was difficult. And so what we did is we'd do both. So if someone had a very specific process, we would do exactly what they said to do, but then we would also do on top of that what we would normally do and provide kind of the creative response as well.
Oh, it's interesting. That's a great mix.
Yeah, I love that tip, because that's the one thing is you have to have that differentiator, right? A way to stand out, Jeff. And that's one thing we teach in GovSales University as well. It's how to increase, because if you're going to take the time to fill out a bid or an RFP, you want to make sure you have the best chance of success to win that bid and RFP.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, don't get into a job. If you can only do 80% of the work, just avoid it, because if you can't get the whole job done, just put it aside and focus on what you can accomplish, because it's so important to go through each one, address exactly what they want, check every box. You need this, we can do that. We do this. And then once you go through that, then you do have to put your spin on it, right? Because you want to stand out from the crowd. And we always say, like, maybe share some previous success stories, right? If you worked with other agencies, they always like to hear from their peers and say, oh, yeah, you did successful with the city of Tulsa, and then you're pitching to the city of Broken Arrow, right? And then you can figure out, okay, that's someone that we can trust. They did a website. They can check it out. It's the same network, same neighborhood, and we grow from within. And then once you start getting agencies in Oklahoma, then it's like, okay, let's grow throughout the country. And that model has really helped a lot of people scale in their business. But when it comes down to the RFPs that you were selecting, how did you choose which one, you thought best? Because I'm sure you get like overwhelmed. You're like,
Oh yeah.
This says advertise, this says marketing, but is this something my agency can do? So people that are trying to comb through the weeds, what kind of advice can you give them to identify what's the best match for them?
Yeah, I think it's still really important to know who your target client is. For us, we knew we weren't going to be working with Denver and Las Vegas. We weren't equipped to work on that large of a scale. Mm-hmm. We really focused on what we called drive communities, so it's kind of the day trips type places that people go to. So, we were looking at a specific size of community that had specific types of tourism that people were doing in that area, a lot of outdoor activities.
Yep.
So that's kind of was our first gauge of who we would go after. It wasn't necessarily what they were asking for, because we were pretty comfortable that we could deliver whatever they needed from an advertising and marketing standpoint, but we knew the types of cities that we wanted to pitch to.
Yeah, I just saw a post, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. It was in Canada, Vancouver, BC, tourism website. They're like, we have to figure out how to brand it. And the opportunity was like $30,000 just to redesign their website. So helping out a lot of companies in the advertising space, not normally like promoting it, but like just designing it was a huge initiative. And I'm sure a lot of cities feel that way right now. Travel's kind of stops, right?
Yeah.
And things are starting to open up. I was just in Asheville, North Carolina, hiking, the mountains and everything. And that's the best place to social distance. You're out on a trail in the middle of the woods. There's no one out there. You can't be more alone.
The governor of South Dakota, she's crushing it, right? She's like, hey, come here. We got everything going. You can see the monument. They're crushing it.
That went out
you want to see people for miles.
Right. South Dakota, that governor, she is crushing this whole process from
What's out there? The Badlands, right?
Yep.
Badlands, Mount Rushmore, everything. Crazy. So Jeff, can you talk about, after that, you've had a couple other entrepreneurial things, and I know one of them is kind of, you have a really health, fitness, endurance coaching thing, and also, kind of a life coaching practice and feedback and desire to help others. So can you share with the audience kind of what that looks like and kind of how you think about that and who you're kind of reaching out to in that vein?
Yeah, on that kind of more the health and wellness side of thing, that's always been a passion of mine. I've always, really kind of had a high regard for health and fitness and exercise and trying to encourage that with my children. And so as part of my triathlon training, I actually got certified as a personal trainer and fitness nutrition specialist and a triathlon coach. And I've never had anyone pay me for coaching. I've always done it as just kind of a passion of mine, just to help them sharing something that I love so much. And I really did those things so that I could get better at what I was doing in my own training and competing. But, I really just try to talk to people that, you really just got to do a lot of introspection to figure out what's important to you. And once you kind of figure out what's important to you, people quickly realize, well, these things are important to me and they're going to require me to take care of my health, to be present with my kids, to focus on some exercise and keep myself in shape. Everyone wants to, I think about someday having grandkids and I'm like, I want to be able to play with my grandkids. Everyone says that. It doesn't matter who I talk to. If they're at that stage in their life, they're like, I want to be able to play with my grandkids. And I'm like, well, if you don't take care of your health and fitness, you're going to be watching them play and not playing with them. So it's little things like that you can really get people to open their eyes and really say, oh, yes, this is why it's important.
Amen.
Yeah, Andrea asked a good question last week, and I'd like to ask that to you since you're in the health and wellness. What's your morning routine, right? A lot of these entrepreneurs and gurus, people out there, like, hey, it all starts in the morning, right? If you start your morning, it sets you up for success the rest of the day. So just curious, Jeff, what is
oh, goodness. Well, I've done 8 Ironman distance triathlons and have 2 scheduled in 2021. So
that's awesome.
And I usually have about a 24-week program training.
Steve, I was just wondering, how many Ironmans do you have scheduled?
I did my first. Hold on. I am very proud of myself.
Steven's very outdoorsy, so I just want to see, Steve, how many races You got pending in 2021.
Swimming's my downfall. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
I can do the bike. I can do the run. I ran my first half marathon in Miami this past year. My uncle, he's done the triathlons and the Ironman, so he inspired me to get out there. He's like, you can do it. You just train and you do it, and you'll do it. So my thing was just to finish sub 2 for like 1 hour 59 minutes for my first half marathon. So
that's good.
But yeah, Jack, he did the full marathon, so he's got one up on me, but I'm gonna get that one day.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, when I get kind of towards the last 2 months right before the event, it's almost a full-time or a second job. I mean, I'll spend anywhere 15 to 20 hours a week, and having a wife and my own business and 5 kids, finding time to fit that in is not easy. So I have a lot of 4 and 5 o'clock mornings. I'm swimming, biking, running. I do a lot of weightlifting and yoga to stay, stretched out and limber, and focus a lot on nutrition as well.
Yeah, I think it's so important. Like sometimes when we do this, folks are like, well, why are you talking about his life and fitness? Like they're so connected. We had one of the training for our sales teams, the same thing about, hey, what's your morning routine? How do you stay in good balance? And I think one of the things in the sales world, folks get out of balance, and you see a lot of folks that are either unhealthy or work really hard or don't feel like they don't have time to go stay healthy. And so I just encourage everyone that happens to listen to this, especially with work from home, find the right balance. So it's a marathon, right? Literally life is a marathon, and there's no, you can burn the candle at both ends for 12 hours a day, but eventually you got to find a way to keep your body healthy and in decent shape, right?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me, how do you have the energy to do that? I'm like, I have the energy because I do that.
Right.
I can knock out my work day like no business because I've kept myself in shape that I have the energy to do it. It's not the other way around.
Oh, totally. Especially when the more stress you have, right? I encourage our audience, find a way, if nothing else, to go walk. When you run, all those things just kind of help clear it, and it just comes off you, and it can clear your mind to come up with the most creative things. Just keep yourself stable and balanced, because again, no old school sales, all the old school stereotypes is, being overweight and working all the time and work hard and party hard just leads to downfall. Right? That's that beaker bomb sound.
Right.
Right. Cool. Right. That's someone crashing after the stereotypical 3 months of work only, or work, play too hard. And then you're like, crap. Hey, and then I know, like, as you came out of your entrepreneurial things, now working with the franchise consulting company, and we talked about it a little bit earlier. So can you share kind of what you're doing with that, and maybe how folks could plug into that and what it looks like today?
Yeah, certainly. Probably the easiest analogy is I act as a realtor of the franchise world. I want to learn enough about my clients, their backgrounds, where they are right now, what their personal goals are, lifestyle, financial goals, what their interests are, and I kind of, build kind of a model of them. If we could find the perfect business, this is what it would look like for this specific person. We work with about 300 or so different franchises across pretty much all industries that you could think of, investment levels from 50,000 up to $1 million plus. So there's a lot of different opportunities. And once we kind of build that model for what this person's perfect business looks like, I'll go back to our system and identify several that might fit for them, present them to them, and hopefully they get down to maybe 2 or 3 that are of interest that they'd like to learn more about, introduce them to the franchise development teams, kind of walk them through that process, teaching them about franchising in general, providing legal resources, tax resources, funding opportunities, and just trying to basically get them to make one of 2 decisions. And either way, it's fine with me. Either one, they figure out that franchising is not right for them. They weren't built to be business owners. And that's a huge win because they didn't make a huge mistake with a lot of money. Or 2, they find something they fell in love with and they decide to sign a franchise agreement, and they move forward with starting their own business. Like I said, I don't charge my clients anything. It's very much like a realtor. The franchise systems pay the organization that I work with based on the agreements that they have. And, my income comes from that part of the business.
Yeah. And I would say for audience, listen, there's a lot of folks out there that will talk about, oh, you should do this. It's almost like professors. College professors will talk about a lot of things they've never experienced in life. And so for those of you who are looking entrepreneurially or looking at a franchise, Jeff has been there and done that, right? His starting in the Navy, been an entrepreneur, run his own company, and run a franchise. So if you're looking to, there couldn't be a better resource because he's lived it actually day to day. He's not going to tell you about what it could be like or what someone else went through. Like, that is so valuable. When I see all of these consultants and teachers and people hire, be like, I'll tell you about it, these coaches, and you're like, I know, have you ever done it? No, I haven't done it myself. You're like, it just doesn't leave a good taste in my mouth. So you couldn't not have a better resource than Jeff and his background as you're in the entrepreneurial world and looking at different opportunities, because he's done all parts, sold to private and the government. Great background. And
there's actually a lot of opportunities for franchises to sell to all levels of government, from local to federal. And it probably didn't rise to the top of your mind that a franchise has anything to sell the government. But when you think about it, every government entity from the local to the federal has building and property. Yeah. Probably the majority of our franchises are property services. So, you're talking about cleaning, building maintenance, electrical, HVAC, lawn care, landscaping, tree service. I mean, all those properties need service. Public lands, they need, lawn care, landscaping. They need tree service. We have a tree franchise. I mean, you think about disaster scenarios and, anytime FEMA gets involved, there's a ton of restoration companies that are just slammed with tons of work. And we have probably 5 or 6 different restoration companies in our system. Automotive, talk about taking care of fleet transportation at the government level. There's services for that. I mean, there's a lot of different things that franchises can do for the government if they start looking for it.
Amen.
And once you get those contracts in place, sometimes it's hard to lose them. Yeah. As long as you're providing good service, they're going to stick with you.
Yeah.
That's so. I love that you say that, because I personally work with 2 franchises and help them sell to the government. One was batteries plus bulbs, and I was just looking up light bulbs, and I'm like, look at the price they pay. And then I literally drove like all around South Florida here, meeting with each franchise owner, because they're like, yeah, we have to do this on ourselves. We're responsible for our own sales, like growing it internally. And I said, here's all the schools, here's everybody that buys, here's the price they pay. If you can beat these prices on the batteries and bulbs, that's everybody needs batteries and bulbs. Right. This is good. And help literally probably 10, little franchises just down here in South Florida area. And that's when the light bulb went off. And then I remember talking with Domino's Pizza.
Yeah.
Like all these kids, like, oh yeah, you're having like an event, catering. It's like food. It's like, hey, Domino's Pizza. It's like, this is the way to sell the government.
The government buys a ton of pizza. One of our reps, that's all she demos. She gets somebody on the phone and says, "You want to see what the government buys?"
Really?
Pizza's enormous.
Yeah, even all the educational institutions, especially pizza days at school. I mean,
Fridays.
Yep.
We used to get the Elios where I was at. It was like the little square ones. You guys remember those?
I didn't have Elios.
No, Elios?
Not here either.
Okay.
Steve, anything else? Did you have one last question?
Well, no, I want to piggyback on him and say, hey, a lot of franchise sales. So you took the words out of my mouth, Jeff. So
no problem. So Jeff, how do folks reach you? What's the best way to reach out to you and connect with the things you're doing?
I'm happy to give my phone number out, email address, whatever is best. Phone 918-853-6310. We've got my LinkedIn that they're posting now. And,
there goes LinkedIn.
That's probably where I spend a lot of time, just trying to network with people. So you can catch me there. I think you also have my website on there. They just provide a little bit of information about what I do for franchise consulting and the process that I take people through. There's links there in terms of how to book a meeting with me. So those are probably the easiest.
Yeah, I think it's great. I could not recommend Jeff more from somebody who's lived it, right? There's a lot of folks out there that say, oh, I know what's happening. I know what to do. I know how to, and you're like, yeah, but you never lived it. It's like the college professor telling the students what to do. And you're like, well, have you done that? No. So could not recommend him. But thank you so much, Jeff. Listen, happy Veterans Day to you.
Appreciate it.
And I appreciate all you're doing, helping veterans out there. And so again, encourage anyone who's served to connect with Jeff. He'll help you kind of meander through, hey, what are opportunities out there for you to get plugged back into private industry? And so appreciate your time today immensely. Amen.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity.
God bless. Thanks so much. Be safe. Have a great day. Yes. Yeah, I think for our audience, amazing resource to plug into, extensive background. Jeff is super humble. He's had four entrepreneurial ventures have all turned out really, really well. And so some are more, folks think of like photography or endurance activities, and other ones are like real corporate companies that you think about that he's sold and have had acquired. So there's a ton of success in his career. Amazing.
Yeah, I like how he balanced out his passions, though. And that's one of the things that you have to do, something that you love. Because if you're going to own a business, you're going to have to do it day in, day out. When you're sleeping, you're thinking about it. So if you don't truly love what it is, and I think that's what he does, is he qualifies people. Like before they even make that investment or commitment, right? Yeah. It's like, is this really for you? But yeah, owning your business can be very, very rewarding. Just don't want to discourage anybody from that. Personally, following my passion of owning a water sport business, it was one of the best times of my life. I still look back when I got a state contract in Maryland there and was providing people water sport, rentals and kayaking, sailboat, paddleboarding. And it was a state contract, so it was tied with the government, but I was also living my passion. And combining those two, it gave the stability, the 3-year agreement. So when you work with the government, sometimes you get a 1 year, but you can negotiate, say, 3-year, even up to 5-year agreement. Sometimes they do a 3 with a 2-year extension. So it's something to consider when you're going out there, that government buys everything. So whatever you're into, make sure you follow that path and work with the government.
Yeah, I think even with water sports, right? When you say that, it's so funny. Like that's another one people don't think associate with the government. And so much of it is obviously on some part of government waterways or government lands.
Yeah, so, state park was the land and waterway.
Listen, tying what you want to do in life with your true why and the things that drive you, huge to have success. You can only do things you don't love for so long. And so being able to connect those two and tie them together is amazing, and having a healthy lifestyle. Remembering it's a marathon, especially during 2020, right? It's been a slow year. Yeah. We've all trudged through it, but it still is a marathon. We'll look back at 2025 and be like, remember 2020, right? So just remember it's a marathon, and keep your eye on the long term. Don't get sidetracked with these short-term goals. They typically peter out really, really quickly. Amen. Steve, you got one last little shout out for GSU?
The government's still buying. So you're like, hey, times are tough. I need to find clients. Sell to the government.
Amen.
I know that's what we preach here, but we're here to help hold your hand, walk you through it. So we have over 70 videos, kind of go through the curriculum. It's awesome. Our success rate has been amazing. I talk to people every day now, and I just love getting those phone calls. Oh, yeah, we got another deal. We got another deal. So our process works. We put it into place. So if, like Jack said, he's like living proof, right? You don't want to hear from a professor that's never done it. We have done it. We have been successful, and our leadership team has been great to allow us to offer this program. So get in now. Very affordable. No contracts, no commitment. Sign you up, $149 a month. And start planning government sales in your 2021 game plan.
Listen, for all of you, last note, for all of you that are putting together your 2021 plan, you have to go sell to the government. You have to go sell to the government, because the government's still going to be spending a ton of money. And this last part we started to really emphasize, or in the last quarter, the government's always going to pay. That's not going to be true for a lot of vendors and a lot of contracts and a lot of companies. You can see what's happening in the economy. A lot of companies are going out of business. You see a lot of layoffs. And so the government, when you get a contract, they're going to pay. That's going to be like gold. I promise you, this summer of 2021, when the government's paying you all the time, that's going to seem like a really rare thing. And so please, if you've never sold to the government, jump in, call Steve, and he can actually show you some of the initial things. You want to go into GSU, it'll be amazing, but you have to put the government part into your 2020 sales plan. Please do that. You will thank us later. It'll help you get through the year. You'll get a bunch of money, and you'll always get paid. Amen? Totally. So important. All right, cool. We will see you next Wednesday here on the GovCast. We'll see you next Wednesday on how to sell to the government. Happy Veterans Day. God bless. Stay safe out there. See ya.